In the early 90s, Mario was already an established phenomenon. Everybody knew him, and especially with the recent releases of Super Mario Bros. 3, Super Mario World, and if you're weird, Super Mario Land, people already knew him a lot. But it started to get stale, and people wanted to change. But video game companies were too scared to fight with the big man, the big red man, Super Mario himself. There was no competitors. Besides one company, Sega, who released Sonic the Hedgehog 1 for Sega Genesis in 1991 to compete with Mario himself. It had everything Mario didn't: vertical stages, faster gameplay, and just a cooler attitude for like the 90s generation. Of course, it was a hit back then, and it started off a whole new franchise and a lasting rivalry between Mario and Sonic. But of course, now with the modern generation of games, where hell, there's even 3D, like competitors of Minecraft, Fortnite, or even Sonic's own competitor himself, Mario, with Mario Odyssey or 3D World. There's more possibilities than just, now you go fast. And that's what people are thinking now. So even though it was popping in the 90s, how does it really hold up now? Obviously, before I start the ranking, I gotta say how I'm gonna be ranking them. I'm only gonna be ranking them off of 3 categories. Number 1, level design. Everybody knows it. Number 2, how fun it is for the casual player who just switched from Mario to Sonic. And number 3, the music, because Sonic is known for his music. Now obviously, everybody expected me to put Labyrinth as number 6. But I kind of feel like Marble Zone has the worst edge over Labyrinth. Because at least Labyrinth had creativity with its water gimmick. But Marble Zone basically had nothing. It was just lava ruins. And it wasn't helping that it was the second zone of the game. Right after Green Hill Zone, like, a player just finishes the first 3 pretty easy acts of Green Hills, when it's all fast-paced and stuff, leading you to an enjoyable experience, but then you get thrown into a marble ruin. Now, after beating Green Hill Zone, your first thought would be going fast through the stage, but that's not the case with Marble Zone. It's a lot of waiting, and just waiting, and waiting, and waiting. The only really fast part is probably when you're outside of the ruins, but that's either just the start or the end of the stage, so it's not really much fun to be had. Now with the basics of why I don't like this zone out of the way, I'm going to describe about the 3 categories that I just mentioned. Number 1, the music. It's a Sonic game, it's excellent. Basically, it didn't have to be a category, but it's Sonic video, I have to talk about the music. It'd be weird without it. It's just beautiful. For the first game in the franchise, this is excellent, especially with 90s techniques and hardware limitations. Number 2, level design. I mean, if it was later in the game, it'd be understandable, but for the second zone and being, like, basically just a maze, it's kind of confusing, so it's pretty low. And then the final one, the enjoyment out of players. Again, this goes with level design, but it really is just your preference of if you like puzzle solving stages or just fast-paced stages. Okay. I know it feels weird that I'm not putting Labyrinth as the bottom, or at least second to last, but hear me out. With Scrap Brain Zone, you already have the annoyingness of the first 2 acts, but then Act 3, you're basically transported to Labyrinth Zone Act 4. So I'm going to use this as a transition to the level design. The level design is just pure awful. I think basically what the devs were going for, at least from my eyes, is that make it annoying and hard equals good final stage. That's not, in my opinion. A final stage should be intriguing. It should have a spike of difficulty, but it should have like the easier sections to make the player feel accomplished of the skills they learned throughout the entire game. But with Scrap Brain Zone, I genuinely think it's just basically Mario Party RNG. You don't know how fast, well, I mean, you do know how fast stuff is going to come at you, but you don't know the order in which it's safe to pass. 1 second you could be dodging a spike trap, and then the other, as soon as you jump over it, you can just fall through a collapsed floor. It's pretty unenjoyable, which leads into the player's enjoyment. I would have to say, if they enjoyed the rest of the game, it would probably stay because it's the last stage, but on a scale of 1 to 10, it'd be a 2 out of 10. Now the music. Again, it's a Sonic game. It's going to be beautiful, especially if it's classic Sonic games. I have a soft spot for that music. Scrap Brain though, I love it, but in my opinion, it's not really that intriguing for the final stage. Again, Scrapbrain has like a higher expectation than any of these other zones, maybe besides Green Hill since it's the starting one, but still, it has high expectations. It's the final level. And then you present us with this mid at best music. Sure, it's upbeat and stuff, but upbeat for the final level, kind of confusing when it's supposed to be your final death run. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention this, but when I was 10 and I first heard the theme without playing the game, it sounded like just a water level, and I was not happy. Okay, finally the moment you guys been waiting for. Labyrinth Zone. This stage is just terrible. The only points I can give it is the creativity. And at least it doesn't jump scare death you like Scrapbrain. But again, this zone is just terrible. A lot of people hated the water zones or the water levels in Mario games. But when you compare that with the game that's competing Mario and is marketed to supposed to be fast, and you give us a water stage that's extremely slow, that's extremely disappointing. The only points I can really give this is, again, the creativity. I guess water really wasn't that creative and nowadays, but it kinda was back in the 90s, but again, could have just been Mario ripoff. So with that, I'm just gonna go ahead and talk about the music because the enjoyment was low. It's a water level in a fast-paced game. It does not sound good unless you have like a frog suit or something. But again, that's just Mario. And then the level design, it's Labyrinth Zone. I can't even explain how terrible it is. Going up and down a big staircase thing, getting thrown a conveyor belt with arrows getting pointed at you, it's terrible. So that leads us to the music. The best way I can describe it is this comment I found. This is the actual song that plays when you descend to hell. How do you possibly make a terrible stage and a terrible soundtrack with it? Again, it sounds good when people remix it, but with 90s limitations, it sounds ear-bleeding. I guess you can't put that against a song, but still, just booting up the game and hearing this while playing that atrocious stage, it hurts. Okay, so now this area is more of a actual good stages, but the top, I guess only number 3, I wouldn't play consistently like the top 2. So number 3, Spring Yard Zone. It's pretty good, but it still has a ton of flaws, aka the bumpers and all the spiky enemies. For it being the 3rd zone in the game, after the exhilarating rush of Green Hills and then the sloggy marble, you expected it to be sort of an in-between, which it kind of is, but it's more vertical going horizontal, if that makes sense. It's a straight line level basis, but you have these hills that make you go up and down, up and down. And again, this is when the game didn't have a spin dash, so you have to charge that up yourself, slowly going up and down the hill until you reach a lot of height. But besides that, I can't really critique it, because it accomplished what it was trying to do. A midway test for the player, midway through the game, and just trying to test you on your stuff. And also when it's in between, like, arguably the 2 worst zones in the game, even though I put Labyrinth as a number 4, it's just like perfectly mid experience. It's not bad, but it's also not good. But it leans more on the good side. So the enjoyment. Personally for me, I enjoy these like upbeat type of levels. So on a scale of 1 to 10, probably a 6 out of 10. And speaking of enjoyment, the music. This has to be my favorite track in all of Sonic 1. Besides Green Hills, but that I don't really count that because it's in every Sonic game. Spring Yard's soundtrack just sounds like you're in a random carnival. Which, I mean, it's kind of not really the topic of it, but a casino is just basically an adult's carnival. I just love Carnival Zone. So upbeat and like, sometimes it can be creepy, like the original Sonic 3 Carnival Zone soundtrack, but that's an exception. For some it might be boring, but you can really tell that it matches the level theme. The vibrant colors, but not too bright, but also not too dark. Again, just perfectly mid. But when you're going up and down the slopes, you can really sense how the music was going for there. Up and then down, up and then down. Really, it's just a mixture of what your preference is. Okay, now we're in the category of really enjoyable, unless you're like weird. Starlight Zone is just beautiful. Like, the atmosphere is perfectly captured. It's a night construction area. Of course, not the average person's dream experience, but when you really sit in and play it, the level design might be okay, but just the atmosphere and the feeling of really being encapsulated into the game, it's beautiful. And the feeling of being encapsulated also correlates with the music. It really sounds like you're just laying down on a warm blanket, on the grass or in a tent outside, just staring at the stars. Like, more or less in a big city with all the construction still. It's just like, it's hard to describe in words, but you can just feel it when you play the stage. But I mean, actually experiencing and feeling are pretty different things in my eyes. Experiencing the stage, it's pretty good, but there's definitely those moments when you feel like it drags on or it's just confusing. Especially that one part in either Act 1 or 2. I'll try and get footage if I can, but it's near the beginning when you're going back and forth. When I first played it, it was confusing, and then I found out, oh, there's a section up, and then I realized that was not the way. And then down, that's not the way. You just get confused. But after you pass those confusing parts, it's a pretty easy stage and pretty creative. Especially with that part that you saw in all the trailers of Sonic going up and down 2 loop-de-loops onto a higher section, which is pretty encapsulating of how the game feels if it's only in 2 zones. But still, it's pretty enjoyable. The enjoyment, I would assume, it probably just encapsulates of your preference again. If you prefer the aesthetic and the themes of zones rather than the gameplay, then it's going to be higher, like an 8 out of 10. But if you really prefer the gameplay and don't care about anything else, it's probably a 5 or 6. Both are still pretty good scores, mid at worst, but it's not the most enjoyable thing of everybody, which leads us into number 1. Man, who would have guessed? The zone that actually checks out all of the categories is number 1. Green Hill Zone. It's just a great first experience, especially when the game's expectations are so high, to be competing with the face of children's media, Mario, at the time. This is your first stage of a different genre, a different game, and it does that perfectly. The high speed, the loop-de-loops, the enemies that became a staple to Sonic games, it has everything. On the topic of the loop-de-loops, the level design is just basic Sonic, but that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. I mean, it created a multi-million-dollar franchise, so it should be a good thing. It's just perfect. It encapsulates Sonic. Speed, the loop-de-loops that make you roll into a ball, it helps, tell the player, these are your moves. Even though we have a ton more moves nowadays, homing attack, spin dash, even the drop dash for Mania, it still tells you can roll into a ball. You can't jump on enemies like Mario. You have to be more strategic. Sure, you can on some of them, but not all of them. You have to hit them from under so you don't get hit by spikes on top. The enjoyment, you can't really get that much enjoyment for something you haven't played, but yeah, once you get past that first act and play the other 2, Act 3 may be a bit repetitive if you kind of really want fast pace, but it's still a great experience. So I would say the enjoyment has to be a 9 out of 10. And then the music. The music is a staple in the Sonic franchise. Of course, the newer, the remix versions are better, but it was still a great soundtrack in the 90s. Green Hill Zone just encapsulated speed. You needed to go fast to reach the end. You didn't need to, but it's what you felt with that high-speed-esque music soundtrack. And that's the ranking. Thank you guys for watching, but I want to leave one last message. I just want to say it's weird using my voice after hyping it up in the Discord so much and never really getting committed, but I actually feel committed now, and it's really nice to actually revive my channel with stuff I love. So yeah, thanks for watching. Bye guys.